Hey, what is up, YouTube? Andrew Rooney here, full-time drummer and drum teacher based right here in Auckland, New Zealand. We are back with another video. This time it is Rick Beato interviewing Danny Carey. Danny Carey, who we know and love as the cousin of Jim, brother of Mariah, and drummer of... Cut that out. On the edit, just... Danny Carey, who we know as the incredible, mind-bending drummer of Tool. Now, I'm a huge fan of Rick Beato's channel. I'm a huge fan of Danny Carey. Rick Beato interviewing Danny, it's got to be good. Now, I'm going to leave the original video link in the description of my video, as with all my videos, so please do go check out the full original video. But on this video, I think I'm going to do a bit of a highlights, or my personal, from a drummer, drum teacher perspective, some of my highlights and takeaways from this video. But please do comment below in the comment section with what you took away, or if there's anything that I highlight that you thought, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. With that said, let's hop to the interview.
Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. In today's episode, I interviewed Danny Carey.
This actually started as your place that you lived.
Yeah. When you first moved to LA as a drummer, the battle is just finding a place where you
What
can
an
play your
incredible
instrument.
space.
So I lived in a couple of garage, guest house apartments and things, and then I stumbled on this with a buddy of mine who was a photographer, rented a place down the street, and the landlord told him about it, and it was just a barren shell pretty much when I moved in here, and now we've decked it out like a simple.
It is equal parts, sort of rehearsal and studio spaces that I'm very familiar with, but then there's a good chunk of it that's just like gear level. This kid's getting pretty up there.
So every Tool song has been written in this place.
Every Tool song. The band actually got put together here because I had the space. I had my drums set up, and actually when Maynard moved in next door.
Like literally next door.
Yeah, upstairs in the loft there. Him and Adam were kind of trying to get something going. And I had a little PA in the room, so I said, "Oh, I'll rent you space to do it." And every time they rented the space,
the same as mine.
whoever they asked to drum for them would flake out because they didn't want to move their crap or something. I just go, "Well, okay, I'll jam with you guys," and that's how the band got put together.
Oh my God!
I mean, I've heard this before. Maynard moved in next door to Danny Carey. I mean, the potential alternate universes you could go in from there. I mean, what if he didn't move in next door? Obviously, that's the question, right? Would there still be a Tool? Would Maynard and Danny Carey, out of the whole world, have found each other? Would Maynard have found someone else? Would the group have been the same? It's just, that is mind-blowing. It happens. I've heard of a bit of this in the Seattle music scene with, Soundgarden and those type of bands as well. It's just people you knew. Toto, my favorite drummer in the ever, all time, Jeff Porcaro. I mean, he went to high school with the Toto guys. I mean, these kind of stories, you cannot make them up. It's too weird.
Like I was playing with Jeff Buckley and Carole King and doing like a TV show, and I know lots of stuff with John Humphrey, who taught over at the MI.
Okay, this is interesting. Now, I kept going a little bit through this section here. So as someone who I guess is a freelance drummer myself, not on the level of Danny Carey, that's all right, calm down. This is interesting to me. These kind of insights are really interesting to me, that he wasn't just, out of nowhere and then playing until he actually had a little bit of an upbringing, and he actually talks about in this section about how much respect he had for Jeff Buckley and Carole King. So, I mean, there's quite a lot of territory there, from Jeff Buckley to Carole King to TV shows to Tool. So he's not a one-trick pony. He's not just the prog, crazy prog, metal guy. There's a lot more going on, behind the scenes than just that. Now, just that on its own, of course, is incredibly impressive. As Danny Carey, he's one of the best drummers in the world. But when you start seeing all the strands and how these things come together, opportunity meeting experience. We've got an experienced drummer here. Maynard moved in. He's looking for a drummer for a crazy project. You start to see how these things develop.
Man, he was incredible. I mean, just times John would take off, and Jeff and I would just hang out and play Zeppelin tunes together. So he knew every song, and I think he had a photographical music memory. Man, he was incredible. I mean, just every lead, everything. He was really gifted. You know, it was a good time.
Oh man, you can just see the warmth and the enthusiasm Danny Carey had for Jeff Buckley, R.I.P. There's a certain humility about Danny Carey. There's a certain humility about most great world-class musicians. So respectful and so giving in praise to other people, which just shows how invested in the music. There's no ego. It's music. This is all very, very insightful stuff. Rick Beato, again, original video link in the description. You need to see how Rick Beato navigates this interview, like a complete pro that he is. It's a work of art.
I didn't really think it would be something commercial, but we all loved it and we believed in it. And that's, lo and behold, that's what really translated when we did play our first gig. It kicked people's asses, And
Yeah.
We only played
Humble and lots of humility, but honest.
6 gigs, I think, and then we got signed. Because every gig we played, every person would just come back and bring all their friends to the next one, and we were, by four or five gigs, we were packing out the little clubs like Lingerie, Coconut Teaser, Owl's Bar.
4 or 5 gigs, we're packing out these clubs, and 6 gigs, we're signed. So there's something to be said for, I hate to use the word talent, but there's something to be said for a synergy, a connection, and just phenomenal players doing something really original and exciting. Rage Against the Machine, I think, were similar, where it was just absolute lightning in a bottle, and then it was almost like a bidding war with them, like who was going to sign them, because clearly they're going to get signed. This is dynamite. Same with Tool.
He did need to be there when we were going through all that, so now it's just me, and at that time it was Paul D'Amour and Adam. We just would hash the stuff out for the most part, and then he would come in when. So
Maynard not there for the creation of the music a lot of the time.
We get it more and more arranged as time has gone on before we lay it on him, because it's such a big commitment. The way we write, it's all kind of piecemealing jams together, and a lot of it's just jamming part, and then we record every day and then take it home and find the jewels that have happened along the way of the jam, and then go, okay, there's the good one, let's fit this with this, and then.
All right, so if you carry on a little bit through the video, this is absolutely fascinating. So this is one of the questions. I haven't done a lot of background research on Tool. I don't know their creative process. Hearing Danny talk about how the 3 instrumentalists in the group will get in the room and hash things out, and then bring Maynard in, and then for Maynard to take things to the next level, really interesting. I'm not saying it's an unusual way to write, but it's interesting to hear their process, because it is just so. They're one of these bands where they're so unusual and so complicated that you do wonder how did this get put together? And there you go. They just get in the room, hash it out, sort out the music, add in the vocal ideas and the vocal phrasing and melody afterward.
Are you surprised sometimes with the things that he comes up with?
Oh, every time.
That is a great question.
It
Right?
takes it to another level. He's incredible. I mean,
Again, that humility,
we're
right?
proud of it when we
Yeah.
play it on him, and then it's just like, oh my God, it just goes to a whole nother level.
I love it.
I think,
Every
how
time.
does he think of these things
Every
over these
time.
parts?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you
I
guys
could never
even
do it.
think that,
That's
right?
his gift. Oh yeah, definitely.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah, it makes my hair stand on end thinking about it. So.
It makes my hair stand on end what Maynard brings to the table. Think about that. I mean, if you were a vocalist, well, actually, any instrument, imagine making your bandmates' hair stand on end with your part. It's a heavy thought.
And then our goal is just to capture the drum tracks, and we all play together.
Yep,
We'll
and
all
capture
we'll agree on a tempo, and we'll
this
start
is
a quick
interesting.
track just in our heads, and then as soon as I count it off, that goes off, and then we're just
Here it
playing,
is.
and then we'll do however many takes it takes for me to be happy with my thing, and then we will do edits, like this chorus might be better with this one.
I have to stop it there. So we've covered, well, I mean, relatively briefly, the creative process. So now we understand how Tool are creating things. I guess every time. I'm not sure if he said that was every time, but band hash things out, bring in Maynard, he puts his part over the top. Now we're talking about the recording process, which is another intriguing element with a group like Tool, where again, it is so unusual. How do these guys get this stuff tracked down? Clicks, no clicks, or are they sequencing clicks and connecting different types of clicks together to tie it all together? No, no click. Oh, and the other thing is tracking live, but only capturing the drums. So they'll track together as the rhythm section to obviously get the structure and the feel right, but they're only going for the drum track. Interesting. I mean, not unusual again, but interesting to hear it from the man himself that is in fact how Tool do things.
I think it's okay if things going to speed up and slow down a little bit. I breeze a little.
I love this man.
Most of the stuff I grew up listening to, like all that old prog stuff, you hear it now.
Yeah.
It's funny how sensitive you become to tempo changes after being inundated with click perfection over all these
Talk about that. How do you feel about that?
It kind of takes some magic out of it, I think,
Click takes the magic out of it. Danny Carey.
But I hope that other people don't just hear it as wrong. I think you can kind of
He's
feel
so
like
humble,
that. Probably
this guy.
Young kids, as they're so conditioned to everything being perfect, it might be hard for them to listen to classical music or stuff that breathes.
We've got a radio industry standard now, and you instantly. I'm fascinated on the feedback I get from younger students. I'm teaching at schools and teaching younger students, whether they be 8 years old up to 18 at school level, and playing songs for them, or they request a song, amongst sort of some of the more modern stuff, and then they might request an older song, or I might show them an older song, whether it be Beatles or Led Zepp or Tool or whoever. I'll ask them, what do you think of this? What does this sound like to you? Does it sound good? Like, does it, how? And they generally love it. They acknowledge and they can hear that it sounds older, because it's not this flat, squashed, compressed signal. There's a lot of peaks and valleys in there, and it is breathing. It's alive, like Danny said. So I'm fascinated on that kind of feedback. I'm fascinated in these kind of insights from Danny as well. This is an 11 out of 10 on the Spinal Tap scale interview. Rick Beato knocking it out of the park, as you'd expect.
Talk about your influences.
Oh, yes.
Well, when I started off, it was I had an older brother, so it was whatever he was listening to, trying to keep up, with the older brother thing. Beatles was the first thing, when I was a really little kid.
That'll surprise people, I think.
But I think when I first heard Zeppelin with one of my friends or something, his older brother had a Zeppelin record, and we listened to that, and I was like, man, this wasn't like Beatles, like it kind of old, or like older people's music. I felt like that struck me. And
interesting. Coming up, I felt the same with the Beatles. Now I'm a little bit younger than Danny, but I also felt like Beatles was older people's music. I'm not saying it's bad music. I'm just saying it felt like something my parents would listen to. I completely missed Led Zeppelin on the way and skipped into Vanilla Ice, but a lot of good stuff in there, like all the grunge scene and all that kind of stuff. But Danny Carey, Beatles and Led Zepp. There you go.
Okay, so Zeppelin, and then who else?
Then it was like the proggy guys, like
there it
Emerson,
is.
Lake and Palmer, I really liked a lot, and Yes, Genesis. Those records just had the
Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Genesis, yes. And you can hear that in the Tool stuff, and you can hear that in his drumming too. But yeah, again, great to hear it from the man himself.
Interesting drumming on him, that mid-'70s stuff. And then that was kind of around the same time I started taking lessons, and I had a good teacher that sort of exposed me to some of the fusion things too, you know, and then start playing in the big band and jazz and stuff like.
Okay, I didn't expect that.
76, and I turned on to Cobham and Tony Williams and all that, you know, and then that was my forte then, when learning to read and kicking the big band.
I can see and hear a bit of Cobham in his playing too. Fascinating.
It was just a great experience, you know, just opens up so many doors in the jazz world, and just to be able to read and go buy Modern Drummer or whatever, and then see the little lessons and be able to do them, you know, be able to get something out of that. Like
reading, guys, reading. I know a lot of famous drummers don't read, and people will swear by not reading because they're focusing on the field, they don't want to read. But as he said, pick up Modern Drummer, you can learn the lessons. You can pick up a book, learn the lessons. You can remember stuff. You can take away notes. So Danny Carey, reader, and playing in the big band.
Elevated my playing a lot.
Did that teacher teach you rudiments and you did everything?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I did like playing in the school band. They would have like the state contest thing every spring, and I always learned a rudimental solo, went and played it, you know, in front of the judges and stuff, you know, and then you get a little medal if you got the -- ratings. I got like 4 of those. That's pretty funny.
You see him laughing off his achievements there. He's such a humble, lovely person. But, you know, behind this is a steely determination, as he said, you know, he took out some of these competitions. He won those snare drumming rudimental competitions. So there's that determination in there and work. You're putting in work to take out something like that. You're putting in work. He's a well-rounded, well-skilled musician. I mean, from the Beatles, which is, you know, pop, royalty, songwriting, composition, pop master class stuff, to Led Zepp, which is just, you know, rocking out, to his big band. Then he's talking about rudimental stuff, and yeah, you overlay that with the Jeff Buckley connection, Carole King songwriting, you know, acoustic type stuff. Well-rounded player, well-rounded musician.
It's always good for my hands, and I still
use
do that all the
stuff?
time. Yeah, I religiously, a half hour before I go on stage, I play through a bunch of rudimental stuff, even if it's just sticking patterns with the music playing, you know, at, you know, different tempos or whatever. And I think that's why I've been lucky and never had any hand problems, no carpal tunnel, you know, knock on wood. But yeah, warm up is essential, I mean, especially on tool, because I'm hitting really hard, and if I go out cold, it's just painful almost, man. It just doesn't work, you know. My hands will cramp up, and as long as I'm warmed up, that's smooth sailing.
What kit did you play when you first, like on the first Tool record?
I had a Phonic Plus kit that I just bought off of a guy
Plus
here in town. I can't even remember what it was, but it was a couple of 24 kick drums, and they're all square-sized toms, like 12, 13, 14, 16 or something, you know, and then those were my babies, you know, man. I still love the Phonic Plus drums, man. The Beechwood sound, they just
Phonic Plus
generate a lot of low end. Those bass drums,
Happy
actually,
in the comments.
from that kit,
what was that?
I think I've used on every Tool recording. You know, man, I've have all these other kick drums I've had made, you know, get my endorsements from Sonar, like Signature Series stuff that's insanely expensive, but man, I always end up going back to those kick drums. They're magical or something.
What is it about? It's the tone, right? The
yeah,
timbre
just the frequency that it has, the spike or something is just right. You know, probably, I don't know, around 100, 120 or something. It's just that total chesty.
There you go. Gear, endorsements, and, you know, going with his ears, going with his gut feel. What sounds good? Doesn't matter if this kit's more expensive. No, it's what sounds good. Big insight.
Okay, so you have a theory on thinner shells, right? With bigger drums.
Yeah, I always felt that from playing the Sonar drums, like the little toms just have a cut that nothing else can get, you know. The shells are 9 plies or something, you know.
Yeah,
man,
really thick.
They could always be heard cutting through Adam Marshall stacks and whatnot, and but then the low ones didn't seem to resonate quite as well. So, and when sometimes I'd play on other people's kit that had the thinner shells, I go, wow, these, especially the low drums, they just reverberate in a cool way. So
Have you ever done that thing as a kid where you tap on a pipe and you make that particular sound like in a plastic pipe or something, and it's really thin, it'll give you like a really bassy tone? So typically the thinner the shell, the more low end. The thicker the shell, the more focused high end. It's probably the opposite to what people think. People think, I'll get a big, thick, multiply shell for the grunty low end. Kind of the opposite. Hit me in the comments with your opposing views, hate, and vitriol. Let's keep it going.
Do you single ply clear heads on your toms?
We're even getting into heads.
on the bottoms, on the top, I usually use double plies. When we're tracking, a lot of time I'll use singles, but I can only get a couple of takes out of them.
And
I was surprised when he said that, because I thought, man, he was going to go straight through a single ply head. So he's single ply on the bottom, double ply on top. That's pretty standard.
Because I'll crater out, or just the pick, because I hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, live I have to use 2 plies just to get through the show. I don't want to have to change tom heads. Snare, I use a single ply, but it has a dot. But I go through like 2 or 3 of those a night. They dip out. They just kind of lose the.
I go through 2 or 3 of those a
tone,
year.
So I get the head, so why not?
Okay, so do you find that it's easier to get a pitch using a single ply?
Yeah,
also?
I think so. Yeah, they just the resonate. They're kind of easier to tune for me, but not that I have to do that when we're in the studio. Usually a tech is taking care of it. Guy Bruce Jacoby, I always use. I don't know if you know Bruce from Remo, but he's been my tech on almost every Tool record. I could, if the song's in D, I can just say, hey, tune my drum. They'll put them in the D triad, so. The drums just sound so much bigger and fuller when they're actually in tune with the band. Yeah.
One of the big talking points among drum geeks: do you tune your kit to the key of the song? Now, I'm not a big fan of it. I've talked to producer engineer friends, and they're not a fan of it either. I think it can open up a bit of a can of worms of problems. Now, I think if you're recording at the level Tool are, with a magnifying glass on everything, and someone like Rick Beato, who's producing and engineering at an extremely high level, perhaps you can eke out a few percent better quality sound, but you would have to really stay on top of that, because I just don't understand. I mean, the kit tuning is going to drop. Sometimes even in a take. So yeah, not sure on that one. But hey, this is about Danny. If Danny wants to do that, he's talking about tuning. He's talking in triad and like a chord or key of the song, then all power to him. It's working for him. I am nobody to be arguing with Danny Carey or Rick Beato, but I'm a big fan of getting the drum kit where you want it, and not just to fit tonally in a song. I would rather just get the drum kit in its entirety, and it's, because the drum kit is, essentially, sort of 10 instruments in one anyway. I'd rather get that in tune with itself than be worrying about and hitting its, perfect sort of fundamental sweet spot pitches around the toms and the kick. I'd rather get that working on its own, and then it's always going to sound good in the band. If the drums are sounding good, it's going to sound good in the band. But here they're talking about actually tuning it to fit in with a band key of the song. Interesting. I guess I'll have to try it and find out.
Okay, so I heard a rumor that the console here was Rick James's console. Is that true? Or
yeah, that's the Super Freak board from Buffalo, New York, and back in the day. But yeah, we recorded an Ocean.
Wait a minute. So Maynard moved in next door. That's the first wacky thing. Then his desk is Rick James's desk. I love this stuff. I love this stuff. The super freak himself.
When you take a long break between albums, when you come back together, is it like no time has passed?
Yeah,
Great question.
But the good thing is we usually keep busy in one way or another, jamming with other people or something. So that familiarity with each other is still there, but at least we've usually grown somehow. Like maybe for me playing at the Baked Potato with all these heavy jazz guys or something, you know, so I've added to my arsenal or my vocabulary or something, hopefully, so we have something fresh to say to each other, so it doesn't become that thing where you're standing around in a rehearsal space going, well, what do you got? What do you got? And like,
we have something fresh to say to each other. Now, Danny talks like a jazz guy in terms of that conversational approach to the composition and the performance. So we've got something fresh to say to each other. So these guys are all about growth, expanding vocabulary, and bringing new, exciting stuff to the table. Very inspiring.
Speaking of analog, okay, so what would have been on that you would have done on tape? Which records? So the first
all
couple,
of them.
all of them on tape.
At least my drum tracks have
Always been on analog tape.
That is
Makes it a
surprising.
little more of a pain in the butt if you have to edit things together, but Joe's really good at it. Yeah. We call his editing skill Joe Tools.
Joe
Pro
Tools.
Tools.
So if you're not familiar, most music these days is recorded digitally. Makes it very easy to edit digitally, and you can get things on the grid, and you're on the click, and you're off. You've got a world of potential editing and sound replacing that you can get into. Analog recording to tape, completely different world, and it does lead you down a more performance-based approach to recording, where you're generally hoping to record, whole takes, and that's kind of what Danny's talking about there.
Okay, so this is a question I'm going to ask you because I asked Stuart Copeland this.
Oh, yeah.
Stuart said he didn't know any of Sting's lyrics.
God, that's funny. I mean, I was kind of like that, long times. I tend to listen to Maynard more like a trumpet or like his phrasing and stuff. I know every nuance, but sometimes
this guy's a
I
jazzer.
really don't know what he's saying. That's the same with me.
Wow.
I mean, some of it I do, that. And when we're, before he tracks his lyrics, he wants everybody to be cool with stuff. So he'll give us a sheet of
That's
like
a
every
nice
tune
touch.
and what he's going to sing on it. Like, it's incredible what a great lyricist he is, man. Like the ability to get things across that can be interpreted on different levels and stuff. I think that's one of Maynard.
Chris Cornell, big one for that as well. Very deep sort of existential lyrics that could be taken many different ways. Very artistic, like Maynard.
Shining talents, his ability to do that with words. But when we're playing, I'm not listening to the story or whatever you're saying. I'm guilty of the same thing as Stuart, I guess, in a way. Some people probably be horrified about that, but it's just I'm about the music. I treat it like I do when I'm listening to Doug Webb solo at the Baked Potato or Mitch Foreman or whatever, those guys. I just hear that and try to react musically. It's funny. I would hear more of like maybe the consonants of the words or something more than the actual meaning of the words. That's the way it works for me.
Okay, out of the whole interview so far, this small section here was probably the most surprising, definitely the most surprising, and possibly even the most interesting. So you will hear people, and I've said this before with students as well, I guess it depends what sort of music we're talking about, but you need to be inside the music, you need to know the story, you need to understand what you're playing to fully invest and get invested into the music and to bring it to life and sort of add humanity and feel to the song to be appropriate with the subject matter. Hopefully that made sense, that old garbled sentence. Now, Danny's saying the opposite here. So he's saying he doesn't know the lyrics. He is approaching this like Maynard is a horn player. Now that is a complete jazz approach. I mean, in jazz, the singer almost treats their own voice like a horn instrument, with scat and soloing and everything, and even pitch and the way they'll phrase melody. So fascinating. He is playing the music and he is invested in this rumbling sort of octopus sort of rolling craziness of time signatures and tight band work over the lyrical content, which I guess makes sense because there is so much to think about with the Tool music that, you really have to be on the ball. So I guess that's going to take a little bit to digest, because that is actually pretty counter to what you typically get told and typically get taught, which is, you must be invested in the music. For example, like a blues. I know that he's not playing blues songs, but for like a blues, you need to feel it and you need to get inside it, and your crescendos and everything, you're supporting the story. Very, very interesting section, worth going back and having another listen to that. Very surprising.
Danny, are your signature sticks like a 2B basically?
Pretty close. They
2B are big sticks.
I think that's probably
by the way. So again, if you're not a drummer and you're not familiar with stick sizes, it's a bit weird. They get bigger when the number goes down. So a typical, like a child's sort of size stick might be like a 7A. I use a 5A. I'd say most adults probably are accustomed to 5A, very standard, safe size. Danny Carey's a really big guy, and 2Bs are probably going to be super comfortable for him. I find personally, I've used 2Bs before for heavier gigs, but for me personally, I'm nowhere near the size of Danny Carey. I'm not typically playing that loud either, so they just feel a bit too heavy and big for me personally.
But usually it's a great contrast to be able to throw the snares on and all of a sudden have something.
And if you play, if you play the toms down, what is the sound, the pitch? Can you play it?
So to disengage the snare in a heavier song, and a lot of the time to keep it off for the whole song, so you're playing backbeats on a snare that is off in the off or disengaged position. Really, really unusual, and it's become, I guess, synonymous with Danny Carey and Tool. It's a really interesting choice.
And are your pads, they have, what, 2 different sounds on them? Usually,
they can have 3, some of them. Now, see, this one has 3.
3,
So
yeah.
it's got all that going through the PA.
But it's good for the variety's sake. It's pretty hard to hit them, like, practically, like if you're cruising along on a tune really fast. So a lot of time I just have a center one and an outer one.
Got it.
They're actually divided into 3 on battery. You can see this is the thing, the 3 positions, 1, 2, 3. And so usually the middle one's a little larger, so most of them I have the same sample.
This is all completely out of my area, this
like
pad stuff.
Conga slapping.
Need a camera in there.
This one, it's the same sound sample in all of them, but then I can take the parameter from the center to the edge and just make it bend the pitch. So it's
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of neat. Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's kind of neat when you're playing, because then it just a little bit of a variation.
It's like a real head.
Yeah, it's more real.
drum.
Yeah.
Especially if you make it very slight, then it really emulates a real drum very nicely, because that gets higher.
Yeah.
But when you do it more extreme, it makes it kind of fun.
Okay, so let's talk about the snare. Like, you use metal snares, and you typically use, 8-inch deep snare, right?
Yeah.
That's deep.
I really like the sound of 8 inches.
for a
This was a shallower one just because I had my nicer ones were on the road, but this is what was here. But I like the body, especially as we were talking about, without the snares on.
Yeah.
And you can crank it up tight, and it still has a nice sharp cut to it, but it still has a fullness that I got attached to. So I'm pretty much an 8-inch guy all the time for my snare drums now. And usually metal of some sort, yeah.
You like the tone of it too, and it cuts, but it has kind of a.
I'm the same. I'm a metal snare guy from way back. I think I'm the exclusively metal snares these days, whether it be aluminum, or brass, or even steel, or bronze, or whatever, copper. Metal snares. It's the way to go.
You typically don't wash on the ride. You typically use the tip of the stick for articulation.
I don't really use the shaft on, like maybe for a certain accent or something, but I used to ride
a
more like the
dry
bell
cymbal.
a
Yeah.
lot, and then just
That's a pretty dry ride.
yeah, it's very dry.
Very
I tried
dry.
to get it. I've always wanted it to be articulate so you could hear.
Like a jazz ride, kind of.
yeah. I've always kind of gotten more into that. I like
A
that.
jazz ride, but with 2 Bs. I guess, Tony Williams, famous jazz drummer, would use very, very heavy big sticks. I remember people commenting about Tony Williams saying that they could not believe how big the sticks were, tree trunks.
Articulation that, and I suppose that's something more probably came from like Lenny and Billy Cobham, Lenny White and those guys. Just coming from the side.
You would
that
expect
side.
a washy
and Tony
sound.
Williams too.
Tony Williams, there you
articulate
go.
his ride. That always struck me, and I love being able to hear his syllables. That was cool.
We talked earlier too about the difference using a 24 and a 22-inch kick.
Oh yeah.
This looks like
So that is an interesting choice, to be playing really dry cymbals and going for articulation on the ride, as opposed to, typically we would associate with a heavier rock group or proggy rock group. Well, maybe not so much in the prog realm, but definitely rock and heavier music. You'd expect like a washy sound on the cymbals a lot of the time, at least. But no, he's going for articulation and clarity. Interesting.
Okay, what is your theory on having the different pitches between the two?
Well, when I used 2 bass drums the same size, be it 22 or 24s, I used to always use 24s. I always tuned this one lower just because it made more sense. Like, if the lower one was first, like, I would start hearing the beat backward almost in my head, or something. It would kind of mess with my brain,
Yeah.
And so I always tuned them that way.
Hit me in the comments with that. I don't even use a double kick, or certainly not 2 bass drums. So hit me with your thoughts on that and theory in terms of pitching the 2 bass drums. I'd love to hear people's comments on that. Hit me in the comment section. All right, we will leave it there. It's already going to be a long video. And as I said at the start of the video, original video link, as always, in the description of each of my videos. Please do go along, support Rick Beato, and check out this entire interview without me, breaking it down and pulling it apart, because there is a certain flow to the interview. Obviously, it just goes through as it evolves and they go through the discussion. So there would have been lots of things on here that may be of interest to you that I did not cover or I did not highlight. And guys, as I said at the start of the video, please do comment with anything that stood out to you. I feel like this is the type of interview that we've all wanted. Rick Beato is just such a great person in the scene. He's just such a thoughtful and nice guy in the scene. So he's just extracts these very candid, very relaxed, but very in-depth at the same time interviews. It's just a beautiful thing. So please do, go along, check it out, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please do make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Until then, keep chopping wood, take it easy, ciao.